All right, it's time to talk about 4Play's customizable UI and presentation. This is one of the things that I love the most about this app, and that is that it can be made to look quite beautiful. So here we've got on random start a sort of a redwood or cherry plank background, and the auto theming code is trying to take the dominant color of the background and apply a certain color scheme to it. So I'll go down here to the end of the favorites so you can see some of the different color types for the different types of machines. So up here would be the favorites color, and then non-working color is typically gray or similar. And then you've got the parent color and a clone color, and then that goes down like that. So what we can do now is use the insert and delete keys on the keyboard, which will cycle through different themes. And so there's black, that's no good. Grayscale, the sunset theme, the default. This is my Miami pastel for my Miami Vice fix guilty pleasure. And so we'll go up, and there's dual contrast, which looks pretty good. And then the analogous palette, saturation gradient, brightness ladder. So that's basically just taking the dominant color of the background and applying a brightness to it. So you can tweak all of these when you go into the configuration, and you can check the different themes here that we have available. And right now, by default, it comes with use random dynamic themes. So since I've got 140 backgrounds, I like each time when the app starts, I get a new background, and the UI colors attempt to complement it. And I think it does a good job. So we also start out in this sort of standard front end presentation where you've got the icons and then the game. And with all of the versions of 4Play and some versions of MAME UI, you can offset the clones off from their parents, and I've done that. You can toggle that if you want. And I've also made it so that you see a more opaque version. So it's not as bright. That's the parent, and you can see underneath it that they're darker. When you select them, of course, they take on the full brightness. So the next change that you can affect in the UI is a bump up in the size of the icon scaling. So there are different presets. So this is the icon scale preset drop down that you can choose between. And a lot of this is going to depend on the DPI of your monitor. If you're running a 1080p monitor, you'll probably want something in the small or standard so that it looks a little bit better. And then as you go up to the 192 DPI high-end laptops and similar, you want to crank that up to the oversized, because they typically have their scaling set over 150%, sometimes to 200%. I'm on a 4K monitor right here, and it is seen as a 150 scaling on Windows 11. So I keep it at the default here. So that's showing 56 pixels for the non-selected one, and then 64 pixels for the selected one. If we close out of that, you can see that when you select a game, it becomes slightly larger here than the other ones above and below it. Okay, we'll go back and take another look here. These are also controllable by shortcut keys, and that's the Alt-I here to cycle the icons, and the other option we'll talk about is cycling the game list. So let's go ahead and cycle the icons first off. So again, as I said, this is the default for a 4K monitor like mine. I'm going to hit Alt-I, and we're going to go up one notch. Okay, things still look pretty decent as far as the detail goes. These are 64 by 64 pixel icons, and so the scaling methodology looks pretty good as you go up. So this is the second to largest. If we go back in here, this is the showcase version. We'll escape out of that and do another Alt-I, and that'll take you up to the largest version. And so this starts to get a little big on a 14K at 150%, but looks good on a 200% scaled laptop screen. So let's go ahead and then go back. It cycles around. We'll hit Alt-I again, and that's the tiny one. Well, not tiny, but it's the smallest version, and it's the one that you would use if you were running at 96 DPI, which is 1080p. So we'll OK that and go back to the screen here. And so this is basically what the original release of 4Play looked like on a 4K monitor if you didn't cheat with the DPI. And so obviously you can't really see too much of the icon here, and that's what prompted the whole modernization of 4Play, was to be able to see the monitors, see the icons in higher resolution on high resolution monitors. So let's go back up to its normal amount. So that was just a change in the icon presets rather. And so now we're going to change the base icon size. So the difference between what we were just looking at is we will go into large here, and now the icons don't zoom to a larger size. They're all the same 64 pixels. So there isn't a jump from 56 to 64. Everybody stays the same size. Okay, and that's a choice that you can toggle between with the Tab key on the keyboard. So watch what happens next when we hit Tab. We're going to go from this sort of a list view to pure icon, and so we drop down to the machine names. If you've been around MAME for as long as I have, 25 plus years or whatever, you get to know your short names, and so you're able to recognize them and jump around. So this is another view that the initial launch of 4Play didn't have, and there was another nice front end at the time called Emulator that had a similar feature, which I always liked, that you could jump to a bigger icon and present that in a list view or in a way like this. Now the original MAME32 and MAME UI, you could also bump it up to a look like this. So if we hit Tab again, that will take us to a full screen of icons and remove the art from the right hand side. And so this is kind of an interesting look and can be fun to scroll through. We're in the main list right now, so you can see a bunch of the non-working games are starting to show up, and I use the one of my non-working icons along with the non-working overlay. It's kind of a double visual indicator that this thing isn't working. So you can scroll through all of that, and the same navigation applies when you're in these sorts of view. And so if we hit tab again, oh look, there's all of Arby's apples. So we'll hit tab again to come out. And we'll hit to come out of it and back to the prior regular view. Okay, so even while you're in the normal view here, the what do I call it? Okay. Yeah, it's basically just the game list view. You can also turn off the art area here with Alt O or Alt 0. It goes to nothing basically here, and so the focus goes all the way from one side to the other. And some people like this. It's kind of tough for me because I don't get to see the actual art over there. So let's go back to it. But you can toggle to it. And I should also mention that the border of the art is also part of the theme, and so it will try to utilize the back color here. So let's close this and get a new background. Let's see what shows up. Okay, so there's there's a wild green one. Okay, so we can go into flyer view here with a left click, and let's increase the size so there isn't any more icon zooming. And let's go back in here and change our art opacity to something like 0.75 and change the border up to 100. And let's see what's okay that. And you can see the subtlety of the background image coming through the flyer. And so that can look kind of nice. Let's go and look at a one that's fully black like asteroids. And go back to there. So yeah, on a screenshot that has, or a snapshot that has a black background, you can see the background of foreplay shining through. And this is kind of subtle if you don't want the full effect. Let's do some randomization here. Okay, so we've made all of those wild changes. Let's go ahead and hit reset to default. It asks if you want to do that. Are you sure? Yes. So it takes us back to the old school version. This is what foreplay shipped with once upon a time. That's the default background with a default color scheme in Segoe UI font. All right, it's still that, yes. Okay. All right, so the original version of foreplay had some additional contributors add some code that made it more cabinet friendly, which was fine at the time. I don't have much of a need for it, so those features aren't available anymore. But one of the things that they did was make it so that you could hit F11 and go into a full screen version without the Chrome of Windows 11. And so I've maintained that. Let's go ahead and crank that up, and it looks it looks like that. Now on a 4K monitor, you can see over here that it would be helpful to increase the size of the icons. So we're going to go ahead and do that with Alt-I and get to the largest ones that we can. We're at the oversized, okay? And then we'll do that. Oh, there's Plimpton. Let's click on him. Okay. So this is full screen. with no chrome on the top. And you can navigate between these guys. And this brings up another setting in the config where you can actually tell it to use the pixelated snapshots. So this isn't going to be applying any kind of bilinear filtering or bicubic, I guess it would be, for the higher quality. So let's click OK here and watch what happens to the screenshot, the snapshot. Right, because these are now being taken at their MAME original machine resolutions, when they're increased in size with nearest neighbor, it's much more sharp. And on a 4K monitor, you don't get the artifacting and the interpolation that you might in some of the other ones. So there's a setting in here to launch all the time in full screen. So start in full screen if you wanted to do that. This is what it would look like. But we're not going to do that as attractive as it is. You get to really see some of the work on the icons. Now, when I do the icons, for the most part, 80% plus, I try to stick with images from the game's flyers. Excuse me. So, like Donkey Kong, for example, you know, there's his face, and there's the icon of it. So some of them obviously don't have decent flyers, excuse me, to do that with. So things like Frontline here get old Sly Stallone as Rambo and various other pop culture references that I've got sprinkled around here. For Karate Champ, I've got Daniel and Johnny. But anyhow, that's going off tangent for a little bit. Let me go ahead and hit F11. We'll come out of that, and then we need to adjust that because that looks kind of wild. We'll take it back to that and decrease back to the normal size. Now, you can resize foreplay however you want, and the art area will go with it. Let's go ahead and size it like this or something cuckoo. And there you go. So let's switch that back to defaults. Bump it back to the Toho scope aspect ratio. And if you want to keep that aspect ratio but just increase it in size, you hold down the control key and drag, and you get the same aspect ratio, just a larger window, which is kind of fun. But anyhow, let's go ahead, restore to defaults again, and do that. So I think we've gone through a lot of the customizations that you can do. We could talk about you have the option to show clones and non-working machines. If you don't, the list gets cut down considerably. It goes all the way down to 6895, as you can see. And yeah, when you just start clicking through that, it's a little bit more of a manageable list with items that have been promoted to working and don't have any clones associated with them. You'll miss out on some stuff. That's why I like to keep it typically on, so I can get to things like the previously marked non-working Model 2 games. And so those are slowly trickling in to be working, which is very exciting. Matthew is doing good work, and so is Voss on those. I've been very patient and not jumped on any previous emulators and waited for MAME, and so now it's finally coming through. All right, and let's see. Anything else in here that we need to discuss? I think you can take the non-working overlays off That's the little verboten symbol that appeared here in the corner, and we can turn that back on, and I can show you what it looks like here when I choose OK. Whoop, jumped back up. So yeah, there it is. You basically have a non-working icon, and if you want to, you can attach that additionally. I just kind of like the way the colors combine. Let's escape and get a new background. Okay, that's gray. Okay, I think that's going to be it for this video. Sorry for the pause there, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.